Hi, I'm Carla with Country Girl Creations, and today we are going to be making the clothes for our Juno Doll 2.0. I make my Juno doll a little bit different than the pattern says. I add some length, about 2.5 inches to the pants, and I add length to the top as well as to the sleeves. I changed the way I did the back and put snaps in. I've also used the finished edge of a t-shirt so you don't have to hem the bottom. Come join me to see how I made this pattern a little bit different than what it suggests. Now we're going to start the cutting process. I chose to use shirts instead of using fabric because if you notice, this bottom seam is already hemmed, and we're going to utilize that in our pattern so we don't have to hem the bottom of the shirt or dress, whatever you want to do with it. This is the fabric I'm going to use for the dress. I'm going to open it up all the way. The first thing we're going to do is cut up the seams. So now I have two pieces of fabric that used to be a shirt. I'm going to take the back panel and I'm going to measure from the bottom edge because we want to save that edge. Now we will get the front side of the shirt that we were just cutting up. Be cutting out the two pieces for the pants the front and the back side. We've got our front and back with the finished edge at the bottom. We're going to take the bottom part of our front and we're going to gather the top portion of it. Where you see the finished edge, we're going to go to the opposite side. We're going to have a piece of thread with a knot at one end. Now you have a gathered side and a finished edge side. It's time to go to our embroidery machine. Now that we have our hoop installed and the design up on our embroidery machine, we're going to go ahead and stitch out the bodice. If you notice, there is a line. Since I'm using white, it doesn't show up very well, but there is a placement line of where you're supposed to put everything. You're going to take your gathered skirt panel and you're going to place it pretty side up. If you notice the way I placed the fabric, I have an inch of no pleating on either side, and then all the gathering or pleating is right in the center. I'm going to stitch down this first line. It's going to hold all of this in place. I moved the stage of the embroidery design back to stage 2 because I do things a little bit different than the pattern says. I like to lock down this so it's not shifting underneath my bodice fabric. Then I'm going to take the top portion of the dress. I'm going to put it down right on top of this. And I'm going to restitch that same line. I just pulled out the string that was used to gather the stitches. Now I'm going to flip my bodice up, smoothing it out, making sure there's no wrinkles. Now what's easiest for me is to stitch down the third step. I know the design now says it's finished. However, I like going back to the third step again so that we can finish. The next piece that you put down are the two back panels. I like to trim my stitches. So we're not contending with those. I like doing it this way because if you notice, there's actual stitches here that show you where it's going to be stitching. That way you can put the rolled up fabric here in the center where there's no stitching in the neck. I'm going to put right sides down and I'm going to line up the stitching on that finished edge. I'm going to smooth out the fabric as best as I can, making sure that I'm leaving enough over to the edge and I do the same thing with the other piece. I lay it face down and I line up the stitching on that bottom finished edge. At this point, I'd want to move the presser foot one stitch forward. Now I will begin the design. At this point, I stop, cut my thread, and then I advance it because it's going to pull your fabric. No matter what I do, it pulls the fabric. I don't want it to start stitching until I get all of the fabric straightened out. Make sure everything's lined up and smoothed out. Again, I will use the cut and let it advance. Make sure that my fabric is not underneath that presser foot, and I will proceed. Now we're going to stitch down the placement stitch for the pants. Because I like my pants 2 to 2.5 inches longer than what the pattern calls for, I'm going to line the ruler up with the bottom edge of the pants. Now I'll lift the top fabric. Now I will take the back of the fabric. I will line finished edge up with the finished edge. And I'll go ahead and stitch the pants. So now we have our two pieces, our top and our pants. We're going to work on our top first, and then I'll move to the pants. With our top, you turn it this way so you can see it better. With our top, we have to sew with a sewing machine. We're going to sew from here where the stitches stop all the way to this corner down here. So I'm going to get my ruler and I'm going to straighten this fabric out. I'm going to go from that corner all the way to the bottom of the stitches. Before you write on fabric with one of these friction pins, make sure that you test it out first, because sometimes it'll leave a mark behind. Most of the time it won't, but I have had a couple of incidences where it did, so always check it first. You just, when you iron this, it'll just disappear most of the time. Now I'm going to spin this around. I'm going to do the same thing. The bottom edge of the stitches to the bottom edge of the back panel. I'm going to line it up and I'm going to mark. That's all the pattern tells you to do. So this is the exact same as this. So this is the part that's already stitched on the embroidery machine. What we're going to do is this I've already marked where we're going to sew, and this is the finished edge. I like extending the shoulders 2.5 inches on the top and 1 inch on the bottom. 2.5 inches on the top and 1 inch on the bottom. That just gives it a longer sleeve and it sits better for me. You don't have to do that, but that's what I do. So I'm going to mark. Two and a half inches on the top. One inch on the bottom. Two and a half inches on the top. 1 inch on the bottom. Now I like to pin the finish edges, making sure that they line up. I also like to pin the top. Let's remove this from the stabilizer. Make sure when you're doing this that this back portion is laid flat and you uncuff that edge. You could even snip right there at that corner. To get it to lay flatter. Okay. Now we have both of the sleeves pinned and both of the ends of the skirt pinned. Let's remove the pants from the stabilizer. First, you're going to trim your jump stitches. And you're going to remove it from the stabilizer. Okay. Now we are going to extend the legs by 2.5 inches. Now we will complete our stitching on the sewing machine. What I do to try to keep both layers lined up, make sure that it is straight underneath the presser foot. I also make sure the bottom fabric is extending past this blue line, and I hold the bottom where I've pinned. Again, we will be using the stem stitch or the lightning bolt stitch. Now that we have our bodice, dress, whatever you want to call it, all stitched up on the machine, we're going to trim just around the skirt and the sleeves, going all the way up here, but do not cut anything in the center. Now, we're going to cut about 1/4 inch out from where the sleeves are stitched. Then we're going to cut at an angle on both sides, about a 45-degree angle. So it should look like this. Same thing with the other side. The back panel I'm going to pull down, and we're going to do that next. This is the neck. Here is the front panel, and that's going to be the front of your shirt, dress. We're going to take it, we're going to cut a scoop out of the middle. See how it scoops down just a little bit? Now we're going to put this on our doll. Turn it right side out. We're going to slide the shoulders all the way up to where we want them and get the front where we want it. And we're going to flip her over. This is why we didn't trim the back. We're going to take the back panel. We're going to lay it over her back. Okay. I'm going to get it all straight. What I like to do is draw a line down her back and go to the point of the dress. So I get it all smoothed out where I want it, where there's as little wrinkles as possible. See how that lines up there? Then here in a minute, when we take this off, this line we won't sew or cut on. We will extend it out about ½ inch, and then we'll hem that. I'll show you that in a second. That's done. Flip the next side over and get it lined up about the same place as the other side. The shoulder seam in the same position as the other side. not going to cut the neckline yet. Flip this over and do the exact same thing. Okay. Now we're going to put it back on her again. I'm just going to mark where I want the back neckline to be. And then I'm just going to extend these lines up. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now I'm going to take it off. We want to make sure that the bottom edge is lined up and that where this meets, the collar is going to be the same on both sides. Now what I'm going to do is cut 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 inch above that line, whichever one you want to do. That way we can fold that neckline down for the seam. Do the same thing to the other side. The only thing we have left to do on this is use the hem tape. We have now stitched our pants, and we will trim 1/4 of an inch away from every side. Do not trim the top. You also want to trim a couple of stitches in the crotch. Do not trim all the way to the stitches, just close to them. This is how I like to trim the top of the pants. I line the bottom of the pants up with a straight line and the crotch in the center. Then I take a straight edge and I line it up with a line at the top, making sure that I'm leaving about 1/2 inch above the stitches. See how that is? Now we'll use hem tape on the top. Now that we have our bodice and our pants ready for the hemming process, we're going to use hem tape on this back panel, as well as around the neck and the arms. And on the pants, we're going to use hem tape just around that top. I press a seam in the fabric so that I can line my hem tape up with the exact edge that I'm going to be ironing. You want to make sure your hem tape does not come outside of your fabric because it will stick to your iron. And that edge is finished. We're going to go to the next side. I'm going to turn it inside out. We're going to hem just this back panel. You're going to fold it down from that stitched mark. See the stitches right there? We're going to fold that down and iron it. And try not to burn your fingers. You see how part of this is hanging out? I'm just going to trim off the section that is hanging out of the fabric. We're going to do the same thing to the other side. Now for the neck. We're going to do the same thing. I'll fold it down. This time I'm going to cut down my hem tape. Now we're going to do the sleeves the same way. Then I'm going to open it up. I'm going to fold that seam towards the back. In the sleeves, I try to split my seam tape in half. It just thins out that bulk in the sleeve. Now for the other side. And this is ready for the snaps. Here's the pants. We're going to fold the top down. If you notice on the back panel, I made it curve up where the butt is going to be, and then on the front I made it curve down just a little bit. And here are the pants. The only thing left is to install the snaps. These are the snaps that I choose to use. They're sew-in snaps. I get them at Hobby Lobby, but you can probably find them at Walmart. I've got her dressed. I'm going to flip her over and line up the back of the dress. I'm going to get my thread. Now that I've got my thread, I take the part of the snap. There's two pieces. One is actually flat on the bottom side and it just has that little part that sticks out. The other, if you look at it, it has a little snap inside of there, two little metal rods for this part to go in. So I take this part first. The back side looks like this. That's the part that I attach down onto the outfit. How I line these up. The first one I can pretty well line up just by holding it and then marking a little dot where it goes. When you sew these in, make sure that you're sewing it the right direction. This side will always have the flat side towards the fabric. aligned both fabrics together, and then I made a little dot on either side where I want the next snap to go. Go ahead and finish that same thing all the way down as far as you want it. I think I'm gonna have my last one about at her butt. I've now completed the snaps. I've now completed adding all of the snaps. And she's done. We have now made our Juno Doll 2.0's clothes. The dress and pants turned out absolutely cute as can be. I love the length. I like the fact that I added more length and I used the edge of the shirt so I did not have to hem it. I hate hemming things. Don't be surprised when you go to put the pants on that they are extremely tight. Would suggest using matching thread for your pants because when they stretch you can see the stitching. I'm excited to see which design is going to be next. Remember to vote on our next Planet Applique design. And until next time, y'all have an absolutely blessed week.